Birds, people, and the dogs that bring them together. This is episode number 29. My name is Bill, and you're tied to the Woe Post. We've got a great episode today with Bob St. Pierre, Chief Marketing Officer of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, host of the On the Wing podcast, and involuntary and unintentional German Shorthaired Pointer breed ambassador. But first, I'd like to thank all of the Woe Post supporters, especially the Patreon patrons who contribute voluntarily every month. If you'd like to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/thewOPost and become a patron. Remember to like and follow on Facebook and Instagram at the WoPost. If you already do, you've probably noticed that I've been accidentally decorating the trees in my backyard with bumpers, and the dogs and I got attacked by yellow jackets, which was not cool and was a little bit scary for Covey, my 13-week-old female small Munsterlander. Also, check out my website at www.thewopost.com and shoot me an email reminding me to build my kennels website sometime before the puppies are born. Of course, at the end of the episode, please leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. All right, let's talk short hairs. German short-haired pointers are affectionate, intelligent, bold, and highly adaptable, versatile hunting dogs. Likely originating from Spanish pointers but outcrossed with several other breeds, GSPs were identified as an independent breed in the mid-1800s, and the breed standard was published in 1879. The first stud book was published in 1897, and they were recognized by the FCI in 1954, 24 years after their AKC recognition. Shorthairs are one of the most registered breeds in the world, which is a testament to their versatility. In addition to hunter's companions, shorthairs can be found in almost all dog sports as detection dogs, as assistance animals, and most commonly as household pets. They have a noble, aristocratic look with a short coat which can be liver, liver and white, liver roan, white and liver, black and white, black, or black roan. Some folks argue that the variety in color is a result of the many outcrosses with other breeds in order to refine desirable qualities or aptitudes. Males stand 23 to 25 inches, females 21 to 23 inches at the withers. Bob, thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Most people are going to know who you are. Most people probably listen to you already, but for the one or two that maybe don't, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. My name is Bob St. Pierre. My day job is as the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. I moonlight as a podcaster. I host the Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever on the Wing podcast that I don't know, closing in about 300 episodes. And then I also I co-host a radio show based in Minneapolis, St. Paul that it's called Fan Outdoors on KFAN. Covers Minnesota with affiliates in North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and you can stream it at kfan.com. So yeah, I've got a couple irons in the fire.
Yeah, I know you stay pretty busy, and then through, of course, your executive position at PFQF, but then also you do a lot of road show with them. I know you were just in DC recently, right?
Yep. Yeah, I was in Washington, D.C. last week. I do a fair amount of traveling, some with shotguns in hand, some without.
I'm sure you've already planned or you're planning Rooster Road trip for this fall and winter.
So it's we've got some thoughts on Rooster Road Trip. We don't like to schedule it too far out. So for your listeners, Rooster Road Trip is it's about 15 years old. It's a concept where kind of the dawn of social media, we were watching our Facebook channel and in particular, it was Facebook at the time, people lamenting, gosh, there's no wild birds, there's no public lands to hunt, like, wow, wow, wow. And Road Trip was the creation, or was created to sort of push back on that um, mentality of there's no place to go and there's no birds when you get there. So it's all public lands. We change it up every year where we go, and we post blogs, social media posts, videos, podcasts, almost in real time, or historically it was almost in real time. We've changed it up in the last couple of years where we've elevated our game and video production wise, so it takes a little while longer to produce the videos. But to answer your first question is like, where's it going this year? We don't like to make that choice until we have a better understanding of what August roadside counts and nesting season than the August roadside counts have produced because you know if there's a drought or flooding and we picked and promoted that we're going to Iowa and it's just been terrible nesting season, a really tough summer, it's sort of anticlimactic and it's a struggle bus. So we kind of wait to see what things look like by August, and then we put a pin dot on a map and start figuring out a route based on okay, this is the reproduction is pretty good, habitat conditions pretty good, which is really mirrors what a lot of traveling bird hunters do. There's some aspects where people go to the same place every single year, and some others, maybe I'd argue the more successful, kind of take in all the variables, all the information they can find, and then plan their trip. And that's really what Rooster Road Trip is, planning public land hunting based on the best information available, and let's go create an adventure.
And adventure's got to be what it's all about at the end of the day. Sometimes you've got to do some pre-work to figure out, like you were talking about, where you're going to be the most successful. But I think there's also value in those folks that just, I hunt this area with these people at this time every year. And even though you can do that in northern Indiana, you might find a pheasant or two. I mean, we usually will come out with one pheasant between, let's say, two hunting parties in a day or two. Wouldn't necessarily be what most people would call the most successful hunt, but we still really enjoy it. We still get out there with our
Mm-hmm.
friends, with our dogs, and have great conversation and just get some steps in walking through the field, right?
Yeah, and I have those traditions too, like rough grouse camp with the same group of hunters and friends, in similar place every single year. And there's tremendous value and love that arises out of those experiences and visiting those same places, Timberdoodle Alley, the Horseshoe, the Corner. We all have those favorite spots. But when it comes to Rooster Road Trip, it's a little bit different. It's let's take some information and let's figure out a new place based on what the conditions tell us, and let's go on an adventure. And I really do think that if you change it up as a bird hunter, change up the species that you hunt, change up the locations, it makes you a better hunter, bird hunter, and well-rounded hunter when you go back to your home turf. You learn things when you're on the road that you probably didn't see the same way if you're hunting the same places over and over. So, yeah, variety is the spice of life, and I like to mix it up a little bit.
Well, and I think you guys have shown too that if you're willing to do the work, educate yourself a little bit, and then use that knowledge that you're gonna be able to find birds.
And dog power plays a big role in it
Yeah.
too, you know? Yeah, yeah, having dogs and wide array and a lot of noses on the ground, that helps you find birds.
Absolutely. And so I'm glad you brought it up. That's an excellent transition because my motivation beyond your role with Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, your role in conservation, and you being an avid hunter, my motivation to get you on here was to get you to identify as an ambassador for short hairs because whether you like it or not, you kind of are.
Well, I'm proud to be a Team GSP ambassador. I arrived here through marriage, which is so I grew up as a Brittany owner. My whole life I had Brittany's. My wife grew up in a Labrador Retriever family. Turns out the marital compromise between a Brittany family and a Labrador family is the German short-haired pointer. So,
So explain that though. So how does that work out? How do you take a a Brittany, let's say a male Brittany and a female lab and somehow turn them into a short hair? Some people would argue that that's how short hairs were created, that they are a designer breed of hunting dog.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me via email. I've never heard in my entire life a short hair, positioned as a designer bird dog breed, but
So those of us that own rare breeds or
uh
rarer breeds, if you will, that's what we all say behind closed doors.
okay, okay. Well, I'll answer your first question. How did I arrive at short hairs? So I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Grew up as a rough grouse and woodcock hunter. So in my heart, excuse me, in my heart, I am a pointing dog person through and through. I love, there's, to me, there's magic. There's few things more magical in this world than a dog encountering scent and then becoming a statue and partnering with the human being. You throw a raptor into the mix and my mind explodes, but just that there is magic between hunter and a pointing dog that I chase, as long as hunting, well, honestly, outside of hunting seasons, as long as it's not nesting season, I'll chase those dogs around woodcock migration north, early preseason training. I just think that there's something darn special about a dog encountering scent and stopping to partner with a human being. Um, so I grew up in love with pointers. My wife, on the other side, grew up with Labradors, likes a little bit bigger dog. So I knew when we got married, our pup was gonna be a pointer, but I didn't really know which one. And Meredith, my wife's like, I don't really care for the white shedding of Brittany's, and that kind of throws setters and Brittany's out of the mix. Gordon setters were in the mix, wire hairs were in the mix. We went to Game Fair, which is an outdoor expo outside of the Twin Cities. Yeah, we went there and kind of car shopped for bird dogs, and you know we both like the look of short hairs, and I got a couple of breeders' names and ended up talking to Steve and Jody Reese at Top Gun Kennels in Iowa, and just hit off a personal connection, which, yeah, I think is maybe underappreciated in the bird dog searching world. You find a friendly voice on the other end that you can talk a little bit about what you're looking for and what you're not looking for. And I arrived at short hairs because it was a little bit bigger. It wasn't, oh, they certainly shed, but they don't shed white hair. Um, they point, they're versatile, and I think that's maybe the thing. So versatile in the bird dog sense that they point and retrieve and they work away, but they're also versatile in the utilitarian sense that they can hunt all sorts of different species of birds very effectively. Like if your listeners are going to say, Bob, I'm a pheasant hunter from North Dakota, and there nothing beats a Labrador Retriever for pheasants in North Dakota. I'm like, I'm not going to argue with that. Or if I'm a sharp tail hunter in Montana, and I want a big run in small monsterlander, and that's the best thing. Okay, that I don't deny that either. Uh, the grouse woods with an English setter is classic and perfect. I'm not going to deny that. But you give me a short hair and you give me a Swiss Army knife, and that Swiss Army knife can hunt rough grouse in the woods, running roosters through the cattails. I have zero issue hunting 13 below, temperatures on the edge of the boundary waters for rough grouse, or North Dakota or South Dakota cattails in the dead of winter, bobwhite quail in the Great Plains, Mearns quail in Arizona, the desert birds of Gamble's and Scalies of New Mexico. So for me, the short hair may not be the single best breed for any particular species of bird, but it is a Swiss Army knife that allows me to travel the country, be effective no matter what I hunt.
And I really like that Swiss Army knife analogy that you use too, because short hairs are starting to get, and it's really been this way for a few years, I think, but they're starting to get common enough, and the gene pool, I think, is broad enough that you're seeing short hairs in working dog roles
Hmm.
in a lot of places, and in detection
Hmm.
roles. We're seeing a few short hair service dogs,
Hmm.
right? In some places, I mean, these are well-bred, very smart dogs that are adaptable to their environment. You're not going to see that with very many other sporting breed dogs. I mean, they're maybe not quite as versatile, if you will, as a lab, because we see them everywhere now because their
Hmm.
gene pool is really that deep and broad. But short hairs, I think, are getting there.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just came back from Washington, D.C., and there were short hairs and a wire hair. As I'm certain there were bomb sniffers walking around the Capitol. We've seen short hairs, we all have, in airports, and they're doing the same things, sniffing narcotics, sniffing bombs. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I have to monitor my blood sugar. There are short hairs. Mine don't do this, but there are short hairs. I've got a monitor on my belt, but that sniff blood, your blood sugar through a person's respiration, their nose or their mouth, to detect if the blood sugar is high or low. There's short hairs that can smell cancer, that are used in hospital situations, early detection of cancer. So you're right. I mean, um, it's unfathomable how incredible these dogs' noses are. Again, I'm sure there are a lot of different breeds that have these capabilities, but short hairs are one of them that can be utilized in a variety of different ways. And that's the Swiss Army knife application. They're as good with cancer as they are with chuckers.
Hopefully, the outcome is a little bit
A little bit better
a
on one
little
than
bit
the
better.
other.
Yeah, right. But so, and how many short hairs do you have now?
Uh, as of a week ago, I'm up to three. So I have a 10-year-old. I'm in my office at Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Listeners will be happy to hear we're dog friendly. I've got a 10-year-old Esky sleeping. You maybe heard her a moment ago. She was having a dream.
Okay, yep.
Then right next to her, I've got 5-year-old Gitchy. And then at home with my wife Meredith is a 9-week-old puppy that we brought home a week ago. So it's a busy home right now. But yeah, I've got every stage. I've got 10, 5, and a puppy.
And how's the puppy doing with settling into the new environment?
I'm really pleased. She's doing terrific. She was born, she's got the Top Gun bloodlines, but she was born within a family in Kansas that had the female. So, had little kids pulling on her, and, born in the house. So, the potty training wheels were already on. So, she's doing great. And my dogs are doing it probably better than I had ever hoped. My older dog has sort of motherly tendencies, so there hasn't been any negative interactions there. There's a little bit more of a the 5-year-old and the puppy are like, really? Did you really do this, Dad? And bring home but there hasn't been any sort of conflict, which is obviously what everybody worries about when they bring in a brand new puppy into a pack. But things have been going really, really well.
Well, that's awesome. Now, are you doing anything formal with your dogs beyond hunting season and the off-season hunting like things? Are you doing hunt tests or trials or anything of that nature?
Yeah, so I've never gotten into the formal testing, competing. It's just I'm a competitive person, but when it comes to my dogs, I'm not. So I've never really gone down the road of being a competitor with my dogs. What I do formally, there's a small group of us that get together every Wednesday night after work. And I would categorize my buddy John Zeman lives outside the Twin Cities as sort of a semi-pro trainer. If he wanted to be pro, he could be, but he's got a job and a business and other things going on. But he's got a couple of horses and all kinds of homing pigeons and launchers, and he gathers a group of about anywhere from 6 to 16 people every Wednesday, and we run our dogs on a two pigeon launcher course. Depending on the heat determines how big like if we're going to go kind of a smaller backyard setting, or if it's cooler, we go to a wildlife area that's open for dog training and we jump on the horses and follow a brace of dogs. So I try to keep my pups in shape first of all, but then make sure that the rust doesn't get too thick outside of the hunting season. So on a weekly basis, they're getting some sort of feathers in their nose and in their mouth.
That sounds fun, and you get
Yeah,
to
it's a
ride a
lot of
horse while
fun.
you're doing it.
You're right. And gosh, if you've never hunted off the back of a horse, it gives you a whole different perspective. Just I'm a relatively short guy, 5'7". You get on top of the horse and you see, big sharp tail country from a little different perspective, and you see your dogs working cover. You learn a whole lot about your dogs and about where to hunt when you're up on top of a horse. It's pretty fun.
I'd like to try it sometime. I've never hunted on horseback before. I don't know if I see it in my future to own or raise horses. My daughter would not be happy to hear you say that because she rides. She takes lessons, and she said, "Why won't we own a horse?" She would
Hmm.
definitely not be happy about that. But I have a lot of friends that ride while they train, and then they'll head out to Montana during the off season to train on horseback.
Hmm.
A few of them will do horseback trials, but most of them just have their horses to train their dogs in big country, and it's a lot like what you're doing.
Yeah, I've only been able to do it a couple of times. Again, this buddy Zeman has the horse, and he goes out generally to Montana and once a year, sometimes Kansas, and it sure is thrilling when you have that opportunity. Definitely have to have steady dogs because those dogs encounter the birds, they lock up, and it's got to give you enough time to dismount, which is easier said than done sometimes.
Sure.
Pull the shotgun out of the scabbard, load it up, and approach the point. And sometimes that takes a little bit. So you got to really have dogs that are dialed in.
Did you do anything specific to socialize your dogs with the horses, or were you just pretty comfortable that they're pretty chill,
That's
confident
a
dogs?
Yeah, good question. Because we have this Wednesday night training group, they were able to over time get pretty accustomed to being around horses. So that when we actually went out for the hunt, it wasn't their first time. It was very interesting though to see that first time you actually go out hunt, their distance from the horse was relatively short. And day two, they stretched it out. Day three, they stretched it out. So much like dogs who, they go from the grouse woods to a pheasant field to a quail field, like they start to adapt to the different terrain. They adapt to hunting with horse from horseback. We just dogs are so darn smart. We don't give them credit enough, and they really can figure things out by the more you expose them to.
I never thought about that, about a dog expanding its range based off of the handler's mode of travel. But I
Hmm.
guess it does make sense in that you're moving quicker as a handler
Hmm.
when you're on horseback. So the dog is going to figure that out. I know if I'm walking fast, my dogs push out farther. When I slow down, they suck back in.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you literally can see that happen over the course of day one, day two, day three. They're stretching it out and they start like, maybe a couple hundred yards. And by the end of day three, they're a mile out there, a speck on the horizon, and you're looking at your GPS and you're like, oh, there's Gitchy locked up, and it's just cool as heck.
How beyond, being able to use the technology, which we all use GPS on our
Mm.
dogs now, but were you comfortable having your dog that far out?
Yeah, in big country Montana, because I mean they really gotta run away from you to for you to be really worried. Honestly, yeah, that's one of the first things spend a lot of time with is recall, particularly as a rough grouse hunter. I like to have a good sense of where my pups are, and so yeah, I feel pretty confident even at that distance, as long as we weren't approaching roads or things of that nature. And if you're on the big rolling plains of Montana, it was pretty freeing. It was awesome.
I'm gonna have to give it that shot sometime. I have to talk to my buddy Dave and see if he'll let me go out with him and his horses sometime. I'm sure he would. But so I know you mentioned that you want to talk pheasants forever and quail forever, and I'd like to as well. What are you guys working on right now? Prepping for, I'm assuming prepping for the big drive, which is hunt season. This is when you're
Mm.
going to get a lot of people starting to think about birds again, right?
Yeah, I think for most folks, Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever as an organization is probably significantly more complex than meets the eye. It was for me. I've been with the organization as an employee now, going on 22 years. And I came from the minor league baseball world. I worked in marketing and communications for minor league baseball when I first joined in 2003. And yeah, on the surface, people probably recognize, oh, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever. They hold banquets, they send out a magazine, maybe they do some habitat work, but it's a very complex organization that works on a variety of different levels, fighting for what we all care about as bird hunters. So, I mentioned I just came back from Washington, D.C. Right now, we're working with Congress to pass a new federal farm bill. And that's important for the creation of private lands habitat. Most bird hunters are familiar with the acronym CRP, Conservation Reserve Program. It's the foundation for the best grasslands habitat we have in this country. And but in the Farm Bill, there's an acronym soup of different conservation programs that create habitat for sharptails, sage grouse, bobwhite quail, ringneck pheasants, waterfowl, turkeys, elk. It's the single biggest. The Farm Bill is the single biggest creation of wildlife habitat that there is. So we're working on that. We're also working on the creation of a new concept called the North American Grasslands Conservation Act, which is modeled after a wetlands concept that's been in existence for a while that protects grasslands through voluntary conservation programs with a little bit different set of tools than the Farm Bill. It's a piece of legislation that is not currently been introduced in Congress, so that's what we've been working towards, was educating congressional staffers on what we're trying to get accomplished for not only for bird habitat, but for better water quality and soil health. And so if you take, some of the things we're working on in DC at the federal level, and you mirror that, we're working on conservation programs at the state level. through advocacy to create funding sources and habitat tools, conservation tools that can be put in place across every state and bird world to create a habitat and public access. And then, yeah, you mentioned we're coming up on hunting season. So, one thing now that was different than 20 years ago, historically we used to do a tremendous amount of content creation through newspaper mediums, right? Like, what's the hunting for? Well, with the demise of so many publication newspapers, that in the evolution of the internet over the last couple of decades, we are the premier source for upland conservation news. So yeah, we're working on the state by state pheasant hunting forecast, the state by state quail hunting forecast. Right. The first one that will come out will be the state by state prairie grouse primer, which details sharp-tailed prairie chicken, sage grouse numbers and population trends, habitat conditions over the prairie grouse range. So, yeah, hunting season really beginning after the 4th of July, we see this hockey stick of interest. Think of a graph in the shape of a hockey stick.
Mhm.
People are like going through their summer, and all of a sudden, the shift towards the handle of the hockey stick, people start really being connected to our website, social channels, being interested in, hey, what are nesting reports? What are August roadside counts gonna say? And people are really engaged in hunting information so they can plan their own rooster road trip or quail quests and trips of that nature. And then that rolls into our fall banquet season, which rolls into National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, which is our Super Bowl event of the year. Every year it moves around the country. And then our biggest banquet season is in the spring, like March, April. That time frame has the biggest lump of banquets across the country. So, we're an organization. Our North Star is habitat. And how can we create habitat? We do that through advocacy. We do that through biologists. We do that through chapter volunteers. And we do that through building the community interested in hunting and interested in habitat. So, kind of, if you look at that all holistically, it kind of dials back to it's a much more complex organization than probably meets the eye for most people.
I think historically, too, when it comes to conservation organizations, there was a lot less cooperation, a lot more fighting, if you will, over available resources, funding, basically.
Hmm.
But I'm a chapter president for a certain conservation organization that is not Pheasants Forever here in Indiana. And I'm specifically not going to say which one because I will tell you we compete for local resources with National Wild Turkey Federation. What we're looking for in conservation, into the efforts that actually go into the ground are completely opposite of perfect turkey habitat, if you will. And I don't think that
Hmm.
we're struggling for turkey habitat here in Indiana. I think we're actually pretty darn good. As a turkey hunter, I will tell you we're pretty darn good. But in another area, we're not as good as we could be. So the organization that I volunteer for and the chapter that I lead are always constantly trying to get out in front of NWTF and their banquets and their fundraising events and things like that. But what I've noticed with Pheasants Forever is that you guys are very cooperative with other conservation organizations and seen it recently with your developing partnership with Rough Grouse Society.
Well, thank you. That is part of the ethos of our organization. And I'm not Pollyanna, and I know that there's competition at the local level for all conservation groups. There's only so big of a size of a pie for everybody to compete with for local sponsor dollars and local, individuals buying chapter banquet tickets. But we try to set the tone at headquarters level that we're all in this for the same reasons. We want wildlife habitat that's healthy. water quality that's clean, soil that is productive, and yeah, we partner with Rough Grouse Society, Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl, National Wild Turkey Federation, North American Grouse Partnership, Elk Foundation, you name it. And we need to get Farm Bill legislation done, to get this Grasslands Act to create momentum, to get state land acquisitions to be passed in a holistic manner. It is collaborative in nature, and people sort of sort themselves out. Like, I'm a bird hunter. I have short hairs. I spend the majority of my money, with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, RGS, bird groups, right? But I also am a backcountry hunters and anglers member, a Delta Waterfowl. Man, I try to spread it around, because I know everybody's doing something good for the entire puzzle. It's the web of life. We all learned that in third grade. It's all interconnected, and sometimes we forget that as we get older. So, yeah, that is part of the ethos for this organization to be very collaborative with other conservation groups as well as with farmers and ranchers. It's easy to for somebody to we've lost all of our habitat because there's no fence rows anymore and this and that and the other thing. But we all want to eat. So it's how do we farm the best, conserve the rest? What's good for the bird is good for the herd. Some of those slogans are part of really truly who we are. We want to have the environmentally sensitive acres, the hillsides, the stream sides. That should be habitat. Our native prairies, our pollinator patches, that should be habitat for wildlife. But there's also some beautiful black dirt that should be growing corn or soybeans or asparagus. We all like to eat. So how do we find balance? Balance in 2024 is harder than ever, but that's what we should all be striving for.
It's interesting to hear you mention the pollinators. I know you guys have, is it Pollinator Week that you?
So there's a National Pollinator Week, and then we celebrate that every year in June. Yep.
I think the education that comes along with that has been interesting and very fun. And we have our own little, I mean, it's not going to hold a single pheasant. It might hold a feather, but we do have our little natural pollinator patches in our backyard that the puppies love to trample, and they were beautiful for a while, and now they're just all run over, and puppy paths going through them and everything. But to watch the moths that come in, the butterflies that come in, and how many different kinds of bees. I couldn't even count. I didn't know there were that many different kinds of bees, but there are, and they're out there making more flowers for us, making more
Mhm.
plants for us. And I'm hoping that some of these things are going to, take some of this pollen and these plant parts and bringing them over somewhere else to make more and better plants somewhere else, so maybe
A-
where some animals can live.
And it's also, don't underestimate how much you can learn by just observing pollinator plants in your own backyard. Just similarly, we live in suburbia, and we've got a pollinator patch in our backyard, and there's maybe a chance a rooster could run through there because we don't live in the concrete jungle. But for the most part, it's for bees and butterflies. But I can look at the cup plant and the compass plant, which are kind of sunflower stemmy plants, and or the it's just a wild bergamot and the coneflower, and I see what those plants do from spring into summer into fall. And then when I go to the field where I am hunting and I see stem structures, I'm like, oh, that's a cup plant. That, a month ago was bright yellow and attracted a ton of insects. And it's like, I better be ready. This feels quaily to me. And legitimately, I can take what I learn in my backyard from structures of plants that are pollinating plants, and then go into the, Kansas field and be like, the right here was insect smorgasbord a month ago. There's got to be birds here. And I'll and confidence to find those birds, increases, and you spend a little, you pay attention to what your dog is doing. You hunt it a little bit more specifically, and like that pays off.
I'm gonna have to start paying more attention to what's actually growing out there. I look at it and it looks pretty, and I get these seed mixes and I cast the seed. I work the soil and I cast the seeds and I
Mm.
do what the directions say to do, and it works. But I probably need to be a little bit more deliberate about identifying what's actually out there and how nature is using it.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. You can draw a parallel because otherwise, you enter into the field, and if you just look at it like a monoculture, when there is diversity there, and you start hunting the diversity, just like you would with like little patches of willows or shrubs, and like, you know what? That's a place where a pheasant could loaf out a storm, or that's a place a quail covey could find a cooler temperatures, or that's not a food plot, but it's an insect food plot, and you start thinking about it from a bird's perspective and where they're searching for food, cover, shelter, escape cover. And you start putting a little bit of biology to your brain as a bird hunter, and you can start finding some trends there, just like you would if you were an angler, a fisherman. You start looking for lily pads or under submerged rocks, submerged points. If you think about being a fisherman from a bird hunting perspective, there are parallels that we can all draw.
And it brings another value to just being out there and instead of going and searching covers for birds, actually studying the cover and getting a full appreciation of what's going on in there, to me is something very, very valuable. I enjoy things like that.
Yeah, right on. And you've probably heard me say a number of times on those pollinator week podcasts and say pollinator habitat and brood habitat are the exact same thing. Two different words for the exact same thing. It's like American football and football, or, it's like soccer and football, like same thing, two different words, right? So like brood habitat, pollinator habitat, exact same thing. Look at it for what it is. There were broods here. Where are they now?
Yeah. So looking forward, so Pheasant Fest will this year be in Kansas City,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And is that I know it's been there before, but how big of a move is that for the organization?
So this will be our third trip to Kansas City. We were there in 2012 and 2016. The kind of the biggest move, the biggest signature element this year in Kansas City is it's the 20th year celebration or anniversary of Quail Forever. So we've got a major quail component to the activities this year as we're building National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic. There's going to be a dedicated Quail Forever stage on the show floor, Quail Alley with vendors connected to quail and quail hunting, quail conservation. The keynote for Saturday night's signature banquet that we're working towards is to be a quail-oriented keynote. So the major component in Kansas City, it makes sense, the heart of America, where the pheasant range and the quail range sort of blend together, is going to be kind of elevated role for Quail Forever in the coming year.
Is there an effort to rebrand it for this year, the Quail Classic and Pheasant Fest?
So other people have brought that up, but that doesn't make for real good branding
No.
by switching the names around. So we're gonna stick with the Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, but lean into the quail side of things.
It's a lot of fun. I went this past spring out to Sioux Falls and represented a small Munsterlander club out there. So I was at my booth every day for 3 days and really enjoyed it. But when you started out and talking about how you how you got into short hairs and how you selected short hairs basically at a at a hunting trade show, if you will,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And that's really what Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic is this massive, conservation related upland hunting trade show.
Hmm.
And in the arena that houses all of the dog breeds, you're going to see, I would venture to say that I could not think of a breed that wasn't represented there. I'm sure there were some, but if there are, that it's something that you're probably not going to see anyway. So if there's somebody that is interested in their next bird dog or maybe their first bird dog, getting to Kansas City isn't hard for a lot of people if you're willing to make that commitment, and you'll be able to go and see several dozen different sporting dog breeds and actually put your hands on them and talk to breeders and owners and trainers right there.
Yeah, it's I think we average about 48 different breeds on the show floor at any particular National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic. And some of those breeds change depending on geography. So, for instance, the American Water Spaniel is the state dog of Wisconsin. So there's always an American Water Spaniel booth when we've been in Milwaukee or Madison for this event, but they don't necessarily always have a booth in Sioux Falls. But the Blue Picardy Spaniel has a booth in Sioux Falls, so
There you go.
yeah, so there's a little bit of, the basics, the small Munsterlanders, the Vizslas, the Weimaraners, the Shorthairs, the wire-haired pointing Griffons, they always, like, no matter where, they'll have a booth. There are some, more rare breeds that kind of show up in different geographies, but yeah, next to the Westminster Dog Show, National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic's the biggest dog show in the country.
Really?
And we kick off the entire event with a bird dog parade, which is my single favorite hour of the year. So it's a lot of fun.
I wasn't able to participate last year. I didn't realize you have to register a little bit out to be in the
Yeah,
parade
a
if it
couple
fills up.
months.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it fills up well in advance.
well, I'm gonna register. I'm gonna register this time. I'm marching my puppies through there. So,
Great.
but yeah, it'll be a great time. But I was able to watch it, which I think is got to be. It's probably better than walking in it. I think you'll watch those birds walk by, and you were pretty funny as an MC for the parade. I know my Brock de Bourbonnais friends, Steve and Amber Keelman, who actually live in Sioux Falls, got a kick out of you being excited to announce the Brock de Bourbonnais. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of fun attempting to pronounce all the different breeds with the dialects, because you say Spinoni Italiano,
yeah.
it sounds like a gelato. Bractu Bourbonnais, it's a lot of fun, and I try to put personality in there. And it's, one of the Brocks, crop dusted the stage this year too,
Oh
which
no.
created a different level of entertainment for it wasn't actually, there was no cleanup needed, but it was toxic. I'll just leave it at that.
That- that's great. Yeah,
It
maybe.
actually almost knocked me off the stage. It was so bad.
Oh man, I hope Steve hears this because he'll get a kick out of that. I don't remember him telling me that, so he may not have known that it even
I
happened.
think it was the Bracco Italianos,
Oh, okay.
if I
Okay.
recall correctly.
Fair enough.
That yeah, there was, I think, like six or seven of them, and one of them, it was brutal. It was really brutal. It just the fart heard round the best.
Oh man, does that go in your show notes at the end of the
Yeah.
at the end of the for next year air
Right.
freshener, right? Oh man, Bob, we're coming up on an hour, and I know you've got things to do. I've got puppies out in an X pen that probably need to come out, and so they go to the bathroom outside of the
Yeah.
X Pen. That's always the best for me too. Would you mind just take a minute or two and kind of close us out?
Yeah, you bet. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. It's always great to talk dogs and about our organization. I guess I'd like to invite people to consider joining Pheasants Forever and or Quail Forever. There's roughly 5% of the bird hunters across the country are members. A pretty small percentage of
Yeah.
people that send in. We're really looking for $35. Go to pheasantsforever.org or quailforever.org. You'll get a year's subscription to our publication, and you'll really be helping a good cause. 90 cents on the dollar gets into the ground for wildlife habitat and creation of public access. So check us out. Pheasantsforever.org, quailforever.org. Pheasant Fest is on there. The hunting forecast will be on there shortly. You can find me on any social feeds, Pheasant Bob on Instagram, Bob St. Pierre, and some of the others. And love to connect with anybody that's listening and has questions about conservation or the organizations.
Bob, I really appreciate it. Thanks for spending an hour with us. Thanks for agreeing to be on the show and, spending an extra hour or so underneath the headphones beyond what you already do.
No worries at all.
I hope you enjoyed episode number 29 of the Woe Post podcast. And if you did, please leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Remember to like and follow on Facebook or Instagram at the Woe Post and become a patron at patreon.com/the Woe Post. If you don't already listen to Bob's podcast, you can check him out on all major podcasting platforms. It's called the On the Wing podcast, and he talks about all things upland conservation related. You can contact me for any reason at bill@thewopost.com. Stay steady and God bless.